Hello everyone, I am the Minecraft programmer and welcome to the first part in my series of Bukkit plugin tutorials. So for these tutorials I'll be teaching you how to make plugins for the Bukkit API for the Bukkit Minecraft server software, and I'll be assuming you have a basic knowledge of Java, you have a basic knowledge of the syntax, and you know how to use the basic functions of whatever IDE you'll be using. I'll be using Eclipse for these tutorials, so if you'd like to follow along exactly, I would make sure you have an updated version of the Java runtime environment, an updated Java development kit, and a fresh copy of Eclipse. All these tutorials will be for 1.8, and I'll be updating them in the future as future Minecraft versions come out if anything changes. So once we have Eclipse loaded up, we'll go ahead and get started by right-clicking and creating a new Java project. We'll call this episode 1. And so now we have a blank Java project that we can do whatever we want here. And so first we'll be telling it to build against the CraftBukkit library. And I will suggest you go ahead and use CraftBukkit as it contains a little more complete knowledge of the Bukkit API. And we'll need it in future episodes where we'll be doing some more complex stuff. So we right-click and hit Properties. And then we go to Java Build Path, Libraries, and we add an external jar. You will need you will need a version of CraftBukkit. You can either download that from Amir or you can build it yourself using the build tools from Bukkit. But I have mine right here. So we'll go ahead and open this. And now we have our CraftBukkit.jar listed as a library. So we'll just apply and then close that. And now we can see Bukkit is listed as a referenced library. So now Eclipse knows how to build our plugin. So next let's add some basic framework for our code. Inside the source folder, which is where we'll be putting all our code, you create a new package, and this can be whatever unique thing you want. Just make sure it won't, because if you make this something generic, it could conflict with other plugins, so just make sure to make it something unique to you. I'll use me.theminecraftprogrammer.episode1. That will be the name of my package. You can make it anything unique to you. It typically goes in this reverse domain order, but you can really make it anything you want. And then we'll make a new class, and we'll just call this episode 1 for the sake of consistency. And then here we have a blank Java class. But we're not anywhere near done yet, because we have to now add a configuration file that will tell Bukkit whenever it starts the server, whenever it tries to initialize your plugin, that it is in fact a plugin and gives it some basic information about it. So we'll right-click on our project folder, and we'll make a new file. That will be called plugin.yml. This is a YAML file, so we'll be using YAML syntax. And for the purposes of this tutorial, there are 3 main things that Bukkit needs to know about your plugin. First, it needs to know the name, so our name is episode 1. It needs to know our main class. This is the class it'll look at when it's starting the server to initialize your code and just start up your plugin. And so you need to put the package name here followed by the class name. So we need me.tmp.episode1.episode1. And make sure that's all spelled correctly. And then we need our version. Oops. And our version is 1.0. That's sort of arbitrary. You don't necessarily need it, but it's nice to have. So we'll save that and exit. So now we have our plugin YML, and we can get into coding the start of our plugin. We can get into doing the framework. So in order for another step you need to take in order to make sure that Bukkit will recognize your code as Bukkit plugin code is you need to extend Java plugin in your code. But once we extend Java plugin, you'll notice that there's a little error here. And we hover over that, it'll say Java plugin cannot be resolved to type, and it suggests that we import Java plugin. Now I could just click this, but hovering over these errors and then selecting the fix takes a while. Instead, we can use this handy little shortcut built in Eclipse. That on a Mac, it is Command-Shift-O. On a Windows computer, it would be Control-Shift-O. And if we use that hotkey, then we can automatically organize our imports. And so basically what that does is it looks through your code, it organizes your imports, and if there's a import that's missing, it'll automatically add it for you. So it's kind of a nice little time saver. So I typically won't be hovering over any errors that you see, unless it's something that's not related to imports. So next, we need a bit more code to where we can actually start doing in future episodes. We can start doing some stuff to the plugin that you'll actually be able to see in effect. So the most basic method in the Bukkit API will be public void on enable. And this is called whenever Bukkit is starting up your plugin. This is the code. This is where it will look whenever it's initializing the server and thus initializing your plugin. So we can start putting stuff here in a moment. But next, we're also going to need public void on disable. This is the exact same thing, only it gets called when the server's shutting down. You can use it to deinitialize anything you may need. It's not used quite as much as on enable, but it's still important to have. So this is the basic framework in order to make a Bukkit plugin. In the next episode, we'll be looking at commands. We'll be looking at some basic functionality stuff you can put in here to print things to the console when you're starting your server. But for the sake of this tutorial, this is as far as we'll go. And if we exported this, which I'll actually show you right now, we right-click on here. I want to make sure we refresh so all the project settings and everything are updated. I want to export. I want to select a Java jar file. Don't do runnable jar file. Do just regular jar file. And click next, and we'll select our export destination. You'll want to have a Bukkit server set up ahead of time. You just run the server jar like you would normally, and you can just put this export destination directly into your plugins folder. Make sure all of these are selected, and you shouldn't need to mess with any of these other things. And so once you've selected your export destination, you can just click finish. And that should export it as a jar, and you should then be able to either start or reload your server, and you will have your plugin then ready for use. But in terms of the scope of this tutorial, this is as far as we'll go. We have all our basic framework set up. We have our plugin YML. We have the basic framework for the code that we need in order to write a Bukkit plugin. And so in the next tutorial, we'll be doing some other stuff. We'll be doing some more basic functionality so we can actually start getting some results. But for now, this is the setup. And I would thank you all so much for watching. Please leave a like or subscribe if you enjoyed. I would really appreciate that. And as always, I will see you guys in the next tutorial.